Hello everyone. Today we will present the study of validity and fairness implications of varying time conditions on a diagnostic test of academic English writing proficiency. Our group members are Meijun Liu, Jiarui Zhang, and Chaoqun Xu. Here is the content of our presentation. And I'm going to introduce the first part in three aspects. Firstly, I'll talk about the diagnostic English language assessment. It is one example of post-entry assessments to identify learners' language needs. DELA is a pencil and paper assessment that includes listening, reading, and writing components. Some years after DELA was introduced, a policy decision claimed to reduce the time of writing tasks from 55 minutes to 30 minutes because it aimed to enhance the administrative efficiency of DELA program and increase each faculty's level of uptake for the assessment because they need to arrange a space for the assessment during the busy orientation week. So, here are some questions raised by DELA designers and raters. Firstly, whether the same task and the rating scale could be used as writing time has been cut. Then, whether the test results can be accepted as validity indicators for students' academic language needs. Many studies have already explored the effects of different time conditions for writing tasks. In the 1980s, Biola compared the results of argument writing tasks in two different time conditions. The study found that students have opportunities to perform better under the longer time conditions. In another study, Livingstone also investigated students' performance in different time conditions. The findings showed that time effects were less influential than topic differences. In 1990s, Hale compared the performance of test takers on two academic writing tasks. He also suggested that time allocation was not radically changing the test construct. Moreover, K-Rowe compared the writings of ESL students completed in 1 hour class time and over a 10 to 14 days period, based on sentence level analysis and a whole score of discourse features. Similarly, the differences were not statistically significant. We can see that previous studies provided inconclusive findings because they're different contexts or different time conditions. So we can come to the research gaps. In terms of practical requirements of DELA, fluency, accuracy, and discourse-based validity evidence are crucial. However, previous studies have focused only on whole scores, which do not constitute evidence of the task validity. Besides, they did not examine performance differences on analytic criteria. Lastly, only few studies have focused on discourse-based evidence that is important for the validity of DELA. Therefore, the current study produced 4 research questions to examine the validity of DELA after the writing time reduction. As you can see research questions on this slide. Finally, let's look at the value of this research. It deals with previous research gaps from a broader perspectives. It explored the influence of the shortening of time allowance on the validity of the DELA writing tasks. And lastly, it considered the implications of study findings on the validity and fairness of diagnostic writing tests. That's all for the first part. Let's welcome Jiarui to present the second part.
Let's move on to part 2. I'll first introduce to you the methodology of this study. Participants in the study include 30 test takers and 2 raters. The test takers were first-year non-native undergraduate students from the University of Auckland. They were aged from 20 to 39, 19 were females and 11 were males, with a mean length of residence in New Zealand of 5.3 years. Both of the 2 raters have postgraduate qualifications in TESOL and rating experience in other assessment contexts. They were specifically trained to rate the task in the current study. As for instrument, the writing task used an argument essay which requires students to respond in around 300 words. 2 optional versions of the task were given which has shown to be of similar difficulty as the test development stage. To help students with the ideas for the essays, supportive statements were given. The rating scale used 6 band levels to evaluate their scripts from the categories of fluency, content, and form. Finally, questionnaires were given to check learners' perception of time allowance. Moving on to procedures, students first completed an online screening test. The scores then were used to divide them into 4 groups. After that, all students in their groups performed both of the task version A and B in different order and under 2 time conditions. Once completed the 2 essays, they filled in the feedback questionnaires as mentioned before. Finally, their works were randomly assigned to the 2 raters. As for the data analysis, t-test, correlational analysis, discourse analysis were used. Now let's discuss about the results. Research question 1 concerns with candidates' scores under the 2 time conditions. From table 1, it can be seen that while all the correlations were statistically significant across categories, the test takers performed highly similarly except in the case of fluency. Researchers also used the comparison of group mean scores as a further basis for this research question. Table 2 suggested slightly lower mean scores in 30 minutes condition, particularly for content. However, there were no significant differences can be observed from these 2 tables. Therefore, we could see that time reduction has not produced major changes in candidates' scores in this study. Research question 2 explores the reliability of raters' judgment. Again, with the correlation analysis, it is interesting to observe from the table 3 that the correlations are constantly higher for the shorter time condition. This means raters' judgment was slightly more reliable under the short time condition. Question 3 investigated the discourse differences. The results showed students had a better performance under long-time condition in terms of planning and monitoring, as well as fluency. For complexity in Table 5, surprisingly, students produced more grammatically complex essays under the short-time condition. Another noteworthy category is content, which was measured by counting the number of ideas. With more given time, students developed more ideas. Besides, they were on average copied 1 string from the input materials under the short-time condition, while about 2 strings under the long-time condition. Other categories like lexical complexity, hedging, and cohesion were showed no significant differences. To interpret the results in this question, we can also think about the score outcome in question 1. That is to say, more materials does not necessarily make the essay better or rewarded in this study, nor students' planning and revision are necessarily efficient. Also, time reduction has not interfered much with writers' ability to extract their own linguistic resources. Finally, the last question investigated the test takers' perception to the two time conditions. About 96% of them regarded 55 minutes to be either just enough or more than enough, while only 60% said that in a 30 minutes allocation. The last table indicated around half of the test takers reported they had prepared a written plan and checked after finishing their works under the long time condition. From the results, we can see that students were favored in the long time condition, but their unease in short time condition was not obvious from this study. That's all for part 2. Jason will introduce part 3.
Okay, thanks, Jerry. Now let's come to the conclusion of this research. In this part, I summarized 4 insights from different perspectives. The first one is time and allocation. In this research, there was no very big differences existing in long and short time of writing session, especially in lexical complexity, cohesion, and hedging. Then it's time allocation and assessment. According to author of this research paper, when considering time for students to finish writing task, the purpose of assessment is important because time allocation can be varied with the type of writing assessment. For example, some assessment needs long time and some assessments need short time, and the time should be controlled in a reasonable range. Thirdly, it is students' preferences. Majority of candidates in this research preferred 55 minutes so that they were able to moderate and revise their essay. Lastly, it is students' feedback. According to the author, in some situations, students might think in a very naive way, and we have to treat their feedback critically and seriously. There are 3 limitations of this study. Firstly, in this study, students were required to complete the essay in a given time. This would cause pressure for them, and time-pressured exam can possibly lose the authenticity of the test. Secondly, quantitative methods could not state the data in a very clear way, because there were many subjective factors in this research, such as students' nervousness in a pressured writing task. Thirdly, 3 research questions were related to the differences of 30 minutes and 45 minutes of writing, and there was less evidence about the fairness of students finishing 2 essays in different time allocations in this study. The author pointed out those suggestions for the future research. Comparing data from the different time allocations for students to write essay is still important, and validity in the test, like DELA in this research, is also essential to think about. After reading this article, we have found that there was no statement about the allocations of students in this research, so we did not know how the students were allocated, such as by their English writing level or their comprehensive English skills like reading, writing, speaking, and listening. Okay, here's our discussion question. In IELTS writing test, generally we have 40 minutes to complete the test 2, which requires at least 250 words. Thinking back when you took this exam, you did not start your overseas studies, and could you finish it within 40 minutes? Why? And if you are given extra 20 minutes, do you think your essay quality would be improved, and why? Thank you. And here are our references. Many thanks for your attention, and we are looking forward to discussing questions with you. Thank you.